Most people panic when a gun is pointed at their chest. Maya Dan adjusted her white apron. At 6 in the evening, inside Lantern Ville Diner, 4 men walked in expecting easy money. Instead, they met a woman who moved like she had trained for violence, who calculated like a soldier, and who fought like she had nothing left to lose. Outside, a black SUV idled quietly. Inside it sat Vic Louis, a man who controlled half the city's underground economy. He didn't save her. He didn't need to, because what he witnessed that night wasn't survival, it was potential. And potential, in the wrong hands, becomes power. Lantern Ville Diner never looked dangerous at 6 in the evening. The glass windows glowed warm against the early dusk, neon letters buzzing softly above the entrance and casting red and gold reflections across the wet pavement. Inside, life moved in ordinary rhythms. A mother sat near the window, helping her 2 children decide between fries and onion rings. 3 construction workers in dusty boots argued loudly about basketball scores over burgers and cold soda. An elderly man in a brown coat read his newspaper near the counter, stirring his coffee slowly as if time belonged to him alone. The scent of grilled meat, melted cheese, and fresh coffee wrapped around the room like comfort. Behind the counter moved Maya Dan, 24 years old, slim, calm, observant. She wore a clean white apron over a fitted white shirt, the fabric bright under the warm diner lights. Her dark hair was tied neatly behind her head. She moved efficiently, refilling glasses before they emptied, delivering plates before customers realized they were hungry, smiling just enough to seem polite, but never enough to invite conversation. But Maya was not just serving food. She was studying everything. The exits, the blind corners, the security camera angles, the reflection of the street in the glass door. She noticed who walked past and who slowed down. She noticed engines that idled too long. At exactly 6:07 p.m., a matte black SUV rolled slowly past Lantern Ville Diner and parked across the street. It did not belong to the neighborhood. Too clean, too controlled. The engine remained running. Inside the vehicle sat Vic Louis. Most people in the city did not know his face, but they felt the ripple of his decisions. At 37, he controlled operations that stretched across ports, nightclubs, and shipping lanes. Calm, strategic, patient. He was not here for dinner. One of his informants had mentioned something unusual about this diner, a waitress who once handled trouble without flinching. Vic did not believe stories. He believed observation. Through the tinted windshield, he watched Maya move. He noticed how she subtly repositioned a chair blocking a side exit. He noticed how she used reflections instead of turning her head. That was not normal behavior for someone earning minimum wage. Inside the diner, the bell above the door jingled. 4 young men entered. Hoodies up, eyes restless, shoulders tight. Maya felt it before she processed it. The shift in air pressure. The silence spreading across the room like ink in water. She placed a plate of fries gently in front of the construction workers and wiped her hands slowly on her white apron. One of the hooded men locked the front door. Another flipped the sign from open to closed. The third pulled a handgun from his waistband. The fourth lifted a metal bat from under his coat. A child gasped. A glass shattered near the counter. The leader raised the gun toward the room. "Everyone on the floor," he shouted. Panic erupted. Chairs scraped violently. The mother shielded her children. The elderly man froze in confusion. But Maya Dan did not scream. She did not drop. She stood still behind the counter, her white apron bright against the chaos, her eyes steady, calculating distance and timing. Outside, through the windshield of his SUV, Vic Louis leaned forward slightly for the first time that evening. He did not step out. He did not intervene. He simply watched. Because what he wanted to know was not whether she would panic. He wanted to know if the rumors were true. He wanted to see if the waitress would fight. The gun trembled slightly in the robber's hand, but his voice tried to sound powerful. "I sat on the floor," he barked again, stepping forward. The metal bat scraped across a table as another one of them shoved plates aside. The mother dropped down, pulling her children close. The construction workers slowly lowered themselves, hands raised. The elderly man remained frozen until one of the hooded boys kicked his chair from behind and sent him collapsing to the tiles. Maya still did not move. Her white apron looked almost defiant under the lights. The leader noticed. "You deaf?" he snapped, pointing the gun directly at her chest now. Maya's eyes locked onto the weapon first, not his face. Cheap handgun, polymer frame, poor grip discipline. His finger rested too tight on the trigger, nervous, inexperienced, dangerous but not trained. She slowly lifted her hands halfway, not in surrender but in assessment. "You don't want to do this," she said calmly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room. The robber laughed, but it was thin. "Shut up and open the register." One of the other boys jumped the counter, knocking over the coffee machine. Hot liquid spilled across the surface. He began yanking open drawers wildly. Maya shifted her weight slightly. Just enough. The boy with the bat moved closer to the construction workers, shouting at them to empty their pockets. The fourth robber began pulling necklaces from the terrified mother. Chaos everywhere. No coordination. That was their weakness. Outside, Vic Lewis watched through the windshield. His eyes narrowed. She wasn't reacting like prey. She was mapping them. He recognized the look. He had seen it in soldiers before they made decisions. Back inside, the leader stepped closer to Maya, pressing the gun harder toward her. "Open it now," he demanded. That was when she moved. Fast. Her hand snapped upward, striking his wrist with sharp precision. The gun fired into the ceiling as she twisted his arm inward. Before he could recover, she drove her elbow into his throat. He stumbled backward, choking. The sound shocked the room into silence for half a second. Half a second was enough. Maya grabbed the edge of the counter and launched herself forward, kicking the second robber in the knee as he tried to jump back over. A crack echoed. He screamed, collapsing. The one with the bat charged her wildly. She ducked under the swing, grabbing a metal serving tray from the counter and smashing it against his face. Blood sprayed across the tiles. The fourth robber tried to grab her from behind. She slammed her heel backward into his shin and spun, driving her knee into his stomach. The gun skidded across the floor. One of the construction workers instinctively kicked it further away. The leader, gasping for breath, lunged again in desperation. Maya grabbed the coffee pot, still hot, and hurled it directly into his face. He shrieked, clutching his eyes. In less than 20 seconds, the entire gang was on the ground groaning. Breathing hard, Maya stood in the center of the wrecked diner. Her apron was splattered with coffee and blood, but her hands were steady. She scanned each of them carefully to ensure none could rise again. The customers stared at her in stunned silence. The children peeked from behind their mother's arms. No one moved. Outside, Vic Louis slowly stepped out of the SUV, not to save her, not to interfere, but because now he had confirmation. The rumors were not exaggeration. The waitress had fought the entire gang, and she had won. He adjusted his suit jacket, eyes fixed on the diner entrance as distant sirens began to wail in the evening air. He wasn't impressed by violence. He was impressed by control. And Maya Dan had just demonstrated something rare. She didn't fight like someone angry. She fought like someone who had done this before. Sirens grew louder, echoing through the early evening streets as flashing blue lights reflected across the wet pavement outside Lantern Ville Diner. Inside, the four robbers groaned on the floor, disarmed and broken, their confidence replaced by fear. Maya stood still for a moment longer, her breathing controlled, her eyes scanning for movement. The construction workers slowly rose first, adrenaline replacing shock. One of them muttered, "Jesus," under his breath. The mother hugged her children tightly, staring at Maya as if she were something unreal. Maya bent down calmly, picking up the fallen handgun with 2 fingers, careful not to smudge the grip. She set it on the counter and stepped back. She didn't want applause. She wanted distance. The bell above the door jingled softly as Vic Louis entered. No rush. No panic. He walked with quiet authority, dark tailored suit perfectly fitted, expression unreadable. His presence did not shout power, but it carried weight. He glanced once at the robbers, then at Maya. Their eyes met briefly. She did not recognize him, but she recognized control when she saw it. "Police are 2 minutes out," he said calmly, checking his watch as if confirming the weather. His voice was low, steady. Maya didn't respond immediately. "You were watching," she said finally. It wasn't a question. Vic's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. Observation saves time. The distant sirens now roared closer. One of the robbers attempted to crawl toward the back door. Vic stepped forward smoothly, placing his polished shoe on the boy's shoulder and pressing him back down without force, just enough to remind him he wasn't going anywhere. "Stay still," Vic said mildly. The robber froze instantly. Maya watched the interaction carefully. She noticed how the boy obeyed without argument. Not fear of pain, fear of something else. "You're not from around here," she said quietly. Vic shifted his gaze back to her. "No," he answered simply. The police cars screeched to a halt outside. Officers burst through the door with weapons drawn, shouting commands. Within seconds, the robbers were cuffed and dragged outside. Statements were demanded. Witnesses were shaken but alive. The officers questioned Maya intensely, disbelief written across their faces as they looked at the injured gang members. "You did this alone?" one officer asked. Maya nodded once. "They were uncoordinated." The officer blinked. That wasn't the answer he expected. Vic stood near the entrance, speaking briefly to another officer who seemed to recognize him, but said nothing further. There was a subtle exchange of understanding. Maya noticed that too. As the chaos slowly settled and customers were escorted out, Lantern Ville Diner fell into a strange quiet. Broken glass glittered across the tiles. Overturned chairs lay scattered. Maya began picking them up silently, as if restoring order was more important than recognition. Vic approached her once more. "You didn't hesitate," he observed. "Hesitation gets people hurt," she replied, lifting a chair upright. He studied her carefully. No shaking hands, no tears, no desire for praise, only assessment. "You work here long?" he asked. "Long enough." A faint smirk crossed his face. "You're wasting time behind that counter." Maya paused. Slowly she looked up at him. "I don't waste time," she said. For a moment, neither spoke. The flashing lights outside dimmed as police cars began to leave. Vic adjusted his cufflinks. "My name is Vic Lewis," he said calmly. "And I think we should talk." Maya didn't answer immediately. She grabbed a towel and wiped coffee stains from her white apron. "About what?" she asked without looking at him. Vic glanced around the damaged diner once more, then back at her. "About what happens next," he said quietly. And for the first time that evening, Maya felt something shift in the air that had nothing to do with fear. Lantern Ville Diner smelled like cleaning spray and burnt coffee long after the police left. Broken glass had been swept into piles. Chairs were back in place. The neon sign outside buzzed again like nothing had happened. But something had changed. Maya felt it in the silence. Vic Louis had not left. He stood near the counter while the last officer stepped out, his presence patient, controlled. He wasn't here for drama. He was here for evaluation. Maya tied her hair tighter and began wiping down the counter again, slower this time. "You still haven't told me what happens next," she said without looking at him. Vic slid into one of the counter stools like a regular customer. "Next," he said calmly, "those 4 boys will talk." Maya stopped wiping. "They were random," she replied. Vic's eyes lifted slightly. "No one moves that sloppy at 6 in the evening unless they're desperate or sent." Maya's jaw tightened. She replayed the robbery in her mind. The way one of them kept glancing toward the windows, the way another hesitated before locking the door. She had noticed it but dismissed it as nerves. "Sent by who?" she asked quietly. Vic rested his elbows lightly on the counter. "That's what I'm interested in." She studied him now openly. Clean suit, no wasted motion, calm breathing. A man used to being obeyed. "You think this was about you?" she asked. I think nothing happens near me by accident," Vic answered. The words were not arrogant. They were factual. Maya folded the towel neatly and placed it beside the register. "You were watching before they walked in," she said. "Yes?" "Why?" Vic leaned back slightly. "Because I was told there was a waitress here who doesn't panic." Maya's expression didn't change. "Rumors travel fast. Only the useful ones," Vic replied. The front door opened briefly as a delivery driver peeked inside, saw the mess, and left without entering. Outside, the black SUV still waited. Engine running. Patient. "So what exactly do you want from me?" Maya asked directly. Vic didn't hesitate. Information, instinct, eyes. Maya almost laughed. "You don't know me." "I know enough," he said calmly. "You disarmed 4 men without escalation. You protected civilians, you controlled the room." He paused. "And you didn't ask for recognition." Silence stretched between them. Maya felt something unfamiliar, curiosity. Not attraction, not fear, curiosity. "And if I say no?" she asked. Vic stood slowly from the stool. "Then you keep serving fries," he said evenly. "And I handle what's coming alone." Her eyes sharpened. "What's coming?" Vic stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough. If those boys were sent to create chaos, then someone wanted attention drawn here. And when attention lands in the wrong places, people get caught in crossfire. He glanced at the cracked window, including waitresses. Maya's fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the counter. She didn't like threats, but this didn't feel like one. It felt like strategy. "You think this diner is going to be targeted again?" she asked. "I think," Vic said quietly, "that tonight was a test." The words lingered in the air. Maya looked around Lantern Ville Diner. At the ordinary tables, the ketchup bottles, the coffee machine humming like always. Ordinary places were often used as shields for extraordinary games. She exhaled slowly. "And you want me to be what?" she asked. Vic met her gaze directly. "On the inside." The word lingered between them like smoke. On the inside. Maya didn't respond immediately. She walked around the counter and flipped one of the chairs upright again, even though it was already straight. She needed movement to think. Vic didn't rush her. He had the patience of a man who built things slowly and dismantled them even slower. "You assume I want to be involved?" Maya said finally. "I assume you already are," Vic replied. "Whether you choose it or not." She crossed her arms, white apron still spotless despite the chaos. "You're saying those men weren't just robbers." "I'm saying they were sloppy for a reason," Vic answered. "And sloppy in public is usually bait." Maya replayed it again, their positioning, the hesitation, the fact that none of them shot when they easily could have. They weren't disciplined. They weren't coordinated. It almost felt staged. "If this was bait," she said slowly, "then someone expected you to react." Vic nodded once. "Exactly. But you didn't." "No." His eyes sharpened slightly. "You did." Silence fell again. That truth hit differently. If someone wanted to observe Vic's response, they instead saw a waitress dismantle their plan. That changed the equation. Outside, the SUV's headlights reflected off the damp street. The city felt quieter now, like it was holding its breath. "Why would someone test you?" Maya asked. Vic didn't answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was steady. "Because I removed 3 major players in the last 6 months. Quietly, efficiently. Not everyone appreciates efficiency." Maya studied him more closely now. This wasn't a random businessman. This was a man who calculated risk like currency. "So this is about power," she said. "Everything is about power," Vic replied calmly. She leaned against the counter. "And you think I can help you because I handled 4 amateurs?" Vic stepped closer, not threatening, just direct. "I think you see details most people miss. I think you move without panic, and I think whoever planned tonight didn't account for you." He paused. "That makes you unpredictable." Maya felt the weight of that. Unpredictable could mean valuable or disposable. "What exactly would being on the inside mean?" she asked carefully. Vic's gaze softened slightly, but only slightly. "Observation, patterns, people who come in and out of this place, deliveries, faces that linger too long." He gestured subtly toward the windows. "Lantern Ville sits on a crossing point between 2 territories. It looks harmless. That makes it useful." Maya glanced around the diner. She had chosen this job because it was quiet, invisible. Now it felt like a chessboard square. "And what do I get?" she asked. Vic didn't smile. "Protection, information, and when this escalates, you won't be blindsided." Maya hated that he might be right. She had survived by staying alert, by staying ahead. Tonight proved something bigger was moving beneath the surface. "I don't take orders," she said. Vic nodded slightly. "Good." He turned toward the door. "I don't need obedience. I need awareness." He paused before stepping outside. "You'll know soon enough if tonight was random." The door closed behind him. Maya stood alone in Lantern Ville Diner, the hum of the neon sign returning to its ordinary rhythm. She looked at the cracked glass, the scuff marks on the floor, the empty seats where customers had panicked. It didn't feel ordinary anymore. Across the street, the black SUV pulled away slowly into the evening traffic. Maya untied her apron and retied it tighter. If tonight was a test, then someone was watching. And she refused to be the only one unaware. The diner reopened 2 days later. New glass replaced the shattered window. The bullet holes were patched, the tables were upright again. On the surface, Lantern Ville Diner looked exactly the same. But nothing inside it was the same. Word had traveled fast, not through news stations, through whispers. A waitress who fought off an armed robbery without backup. A woman who moved like she had training. A black SUV that watched everything and never interfered. At 6 in the evening, Maya Dan tied her white apron and stepped behind the counter like nothing had happened. The construction workers returned. The elderly man returned. Even the mother with her children came back, offering Maya a quiet thank you. Maya smiled politely, but she noticed something else. Across the street, the matte black SUV was parked again. Engine running. Windows tinted. Vic Louis had not lost interest, he had gained curiosity. Inside the SUV, Vic studied the reflection of the diner through the windshield. She had not called the police, she had not spoken to reporters, she had not acted like a hero. She went back to work. That told him more than the fight did. Most people chase attention after surviving danger. Maya avoided it. That meant discipline, and discipline meant usefulness. Vic's phone buzzed. It was Damien Cross, one of his captains. "Boss, that robbery wasn't random," Damien said. "The crew that hit the diner? They were connected to Leo Serrano." Vic's jaw tightened slightly. Leo Serrano was not just a street thug. He was a mid-level operator who managed smaller crews under Vic's network. If Leo's people robbed the diner without clearance, that meant one of two things: disobedience or a test. "Find Leo," Vic said calmly. "Tell him I want to see him tonight." Inside the diner, Maya felt the shift again. This time not from customers, from outside. She glanced toward the street just as the SUV door opened. Vic Louis stepped out for the first time. He did not rush. He walked across the wet pavement with controlled steps, his dark coat sharp against the fading daylight. The doorbell jingled as he entered. The room went quieter without knowing why. Maya looked up as he approached the counter. He stood tall, calm, observing. "Coffee," he said simply. His voice was smooth, controlled, dangerous in its quietness. Maya poured the coffee without asking questions. "You're early," she said, sliding the cup toward him. Vic raised one eyebrow slightly. "I've been here before." "Outside," she corrected calmly. He didn't deny it. He studied her up close now. No fear in her eyes, no curiosity either, just calculation. "You handled yourself well 2 nights ago," he said. "I don't like people bleeding on my floor," Maya replied evenly. A small pause stretched between them. "You ever think about working somewhere with more protection?" Vic asked. Maya leaned her elbows lightly on the counter. "Protection from what?" "From men who come back with better weapons," he answered. Maya held his gaze. "If they come back, they won't leave," she said quietly. There was no bravado in her voice, only certainty. Vic felt it then. Not attraction, not yet. Respect. The bell above the door jingled again. 2 men entered. Clean suits, wrong energy. Maya's eyes shifted slightly. Vic noticed. The men did not look at the menu. They looked at Vic. One of them reached under his jacket. Vic didn't move. He didn't need to. Maya moved first. She grabbed the metal coffee pot and flung it hard at the man's wrist. The gun clattered across the tile floor. Before the second man could react, Maya vaulted over the counter and drove her knee into his ribs, forcing the air from his lungs. Chairs crashed. Customers screamed. Vic stepped forward now, calm as ever, retrieving the fallen gun and aiming it steadily at the 2 attackers. "Wrong location," Vic said coldly. The men hesitated. That was their mistake. Within seconds, Vic's security team flooded in from the street, disarming and dragging the attackers out before sirens could echo. The diner fell into heavy silence. Maya stood there, breathing steady, white apron splashed with coffee and dust. Vic lowered the weapon slowly and looked at her. "That wasn't random," he said. Maya nodded once. "I know." He studied her for a long second. "You don't belong here," he said quietly. Maya wiped her hands on her apron. "Neither do you." Outside, as the SUV doors closed again, Vic Louis realized something important. This wasn't coincidence anymore. Someone was pushing pieces on a board, and Maya Dan had just placed herself in the center of it. The SUV pulled away from Lantern Ville Diner, its headlights slicing through the dim evening like twin blades. Inside, Vic Louis sat in silence, replaying the last 5 minutes in his mind. 2 clean suits, not amateurs, not random street trash. They had moved with intention, and they hadn't aimed at Maya. They aimed at him. That meant the diner wasn't the target. He was. And someone had chosen that location deliberately. Across town, in a private warehouse office overlooking the docks, Leo Serrano paced with agitation. His plan had been simple. A public confrontation. A statement. But Vic had survived. Worse, he had been protected by a waitress. Leo slammed his fist against the desk. She interfered twice, he muttered. First the robbery, now this. One of his lieutenants shifted nervously. Maybe she's just lucky. Leo's eyes darkened. Nobody is lucky twice around Vic Louis. Back at the diner, Maya mopped the floor as if nothing unusual had happened. The customers were gone. The chairs were stacked. The neon sign outside flickered softly. But her mind was far from calm. She hadn't meant to involve herself again. She could have stayed behind the counter. She could have ducked. But when she saw the man reach for the weapon, her body moved before logic did. Training never leaves you. Her father used to say that. Once you know how to react under pressure, you always will. The front door opened quietly. Maya didn't turn immediately. We're closed, she said calmly. I know. Vic's voice carried differently now. Less detached, more direct. She looked up. He stood alone this time. No SUV. No visible security. You're being targeted, Maya said before he could speak. Vic studied her carefully. And you noticed that how? She shrugged lightly. The second guy looked at you, not at the register. A faint smile touched Vic's lips. You read people well. I read survival, she corrected. Silence settled between them. This won't stop, Vic said finally. Whoever is pushing this will escalate. Maya leaned against the counter. Then escalate faster, she replied evenly. Vic's expression shifted slightly. You're not afraid? Maya's eyes hardened just a fraction. I'm tired of people thinking fear makes them powerful. Outside, somewhere in the dark streets of the city, engines started. Plans moved. Alliances shifted. Leo Serrano had made a decision. If the waitress wanted to step into the game, then she would be treated like a piece on the board. And pieces, no matter how skilled, could be removed. The war had officially begun. The first sign came the next afternoon. A delivery truck idled too long across the street from Lantern Ville Diner. The driver never unloaded anything. He just sat there, engine humming, windows tinted dark. Maya noticed immediately. She didn't stare. She wiped the counter, adjusted the salt shakers, used the reflection in the coffee machine to study the vehicle without being obvious. 30 seconds later, the truck pulled away. A test. That's all it was. Someone checking patterns, someone confirming she was still here. That night, Vic didn't park across the street. He walked in openly, sat at the counter like an ordinary customer, and ordered coffee. No bodyguards, no performance. They're watching you now, he said quietly. Maya poured the coffee without spilling a drop. Good, she replied. Let them watch. Vic looked at her carefully. You understand that stepping in yesterday made you visible. I was already visible, she said calmly. I just stopped pretending I wasn't. Outside, headlights flashed once in the distance before disappearing. Vic caught it. A signal. He stood slowly. It won't be subtle next time. Maya folded her white apron neatly and placed it on the counter. Then I won't be either. Somewhere across town, Leo Serrano received confirmation that the waitress was still standing beside Vic Louis. He smiled coldly. If she wanted to be part of the game, he would give her a real round. Leo Serrano did not believe in warnings. He believed in spectacle. 2 nights after the delivery truck incident, Lantern Ville Diner filled earlier than usual. Word had spread quietly about the robbery. Some customers came out of curiosity. Others came because they felt strangely safer knowing Maya Dan was behind the counter. At 6:03 p.m., the diner looked almost normal again. Construction workers at the corner booth, a couple sharing milkshakes. The elderly man with his newspaper. Maya moved between tables in her white apron, steady and alert, but inside she felt the tension tightening. She sensed it before it happened. The sudden silence outside, the absence of passing traffic. Then 3 motorcycles roared up to the curb at once. Not rushing, not chaotic, controlled. The doors burst open. This time it wasn't nervous boys, it was professionals. Leather jackets, calm faces, weapons drawn with quiet confidence. The leader stepped forward, eyes fixed on Maya. Vic Louis sent you? Maya asked before he could speak. The man smiled thinly. Leo Serrano says hello. Panic erupted again, but less violently. The regulars recognized danger faster now. Vic was not inside. That was deliberate. He had warned her this would escalate. Maya raised her hand slowly, stepping out from behind the counter. You want him, she said evenly. He's not here. The leader walked closer, gun angled casually toward her shoulder. We don't need him here, we just need a message. One of the men grabbed the construction worker by the collar, pressing a gun to his neck. A demonstration. Maya's eyes shifted once. Exit, distance, spacing. She calculated. 3 men. 2 guns visible, 1 likely concealed. Outside, engines still running. She acted without warning. She kicked a chair into the nearest gunman's knee and drove her elbow into his throat in the same motion. The gun discharged into the ceiling. Screams filled the room. She grabbed the fallen weapon before it hit the floor and rolled behind a table as a second shot shattered glass near her head. She didn't fire blindly. She aimed low, precise. 1 attacker collapsed, clutching his leg. The 3rd rushed her, but she flipped the metal serving tray into his face and struck his wrist hard enough to disarm him. It lasted less than 15 seconds. The leader backed toward the door, dragging his injured man. "This isn't over," he warned. Maya stood in the center of the diner, breathing steady, white apron stained with dust, but not fear. "I know," she answered. Across the street, black SUVs appeared almost immediately. Vic stepped out before the engine stopped. He walked inside slowly, scanning the aftermath. His men secured the perimeter. He looked at the shattered ceiling tile, the injured attacker groaning on the floor, then at Maya standing tall in the center of it all. "You escalated," he said quietly. She replied. "They did." He studied her face. No panic, no regret, just clarity. "Leo won't stop now," Vic said. "Good," Maya answered. "Neither will I." Leo Serrano made his move at dawn. Not loud, not chaotic, strategic. He arranged a meeting under the guise of negotiation at an abandoned waterfront warehouse. Vic knew it was a trap. He went anyway. Maya insisted on coming. "He's targeting you because of me," she said. Vic didn't argue. Inside the warehouse, tension coiled like wire. Leo stood at the center, smug, flanked by armed men hidden among cargo crates. "You built something stable," Leo told Vic calmly, "but stability makes men soft." His gaze shifted to Maya. "And you let a waitress sit at your table." Maya stepped forward before Vic could answer. "You miscalculated," she said. Leo smirked. "Did I?" He snapped his fingers. Men emerged from the shadows. But Maya had anticipated the angles. She had counted crates, studied spacing, memorized blind spots the moment they entered. She hurled a flare she'd taken from a dock emergency kit toward a stack of oil drums. Light exploded, blinding half the shooters. Vic moved instantly, precise and controlled. His men engaged from the flanks. Chaos erupted, but controlled chaos. Maya didn't hide. She moved. She disarmed 1 attacker with a wrist lock her father once taught her. She used the environment. Hooks, chains, momentum. When Leo attempted to retreat toward the dock doors, Maya cut him off. Not with rage, with calculation. "You attacked civilians," she said coldly. "You lose." Vic arrived beside her, weapon steady. Leo's men were down or fleeing. Silence filled the warehouse, except for distant sirens approaching. Leo realized too late that he had underestimated the one variable he dismissed. Not Vic, not the network. The waitress. Vic lowered his weapon slowly as Leo was restrained. He looked at Maya differently now. Not as someone he had noticed, not as someone he had protected, but as an equal. "You didn't need saving," Vic said quietly. Maya wiped grease from her hands. "I never did." Later that week, Leo's influence dissolved. The city stabilized under Vic's control, but it was different now, strategic, cleaner. Maya didn't stand behind him. She stood beside him. Lantern Ville Diner reopened fully repaired. At 6 p.m. Maya returned in her white apron. Not because she had to, because she chose to. Across the street, the black SUV still parked sometimes. But now it wasn't surveillance, it was partnership. And everyone in the city understood something new. The most dangerous person in the room was not always the one with the empire. Sometimes it was the one who fought back first.